Our first speaker is Ms. Rama Bijapurkar, a recognized thought leader on market strategy and consumer behavior in India. She has an independent management consulting practice and is also the co-founder of Think Tank and Fact Tank People Research on India's consumer economy and citizen environment.
Good evening, friends, and thank you, Ascent Foundation, for giving me this opportunity to share some thoughts with you at a time when we are all confused, even about what we're thinking, never mind what we're sharing. So I'm going to begin by saying that there is a lot of wishful thinking around people who have wishful thinking about what COVID has done to people. And we are hoping that the world has become more health conscious, has become wanting a better environment for our children and for our planet, about making more socially responsible choices, about being even kinder to each other, mindful of the mortality that we have all seen up close, and being more demanding of the brands that we choose from. And I think we would all like the world to be that way. But if we needed a reality check on the latter, at least, about being more mindful and kind in the eyes of mortality and being more demanding of brands we choose, I think a little distant from home, we have the American election. And if we which shows you where 50% voted and where the other 50 voted. And if we needed a reality check back home, I think we all could not have failed to notice that not only is traffic back, spitting is back on the streets, masklessness is fairly rife, and there's not much social distancing. I even went to a pathology lab and there was no social distancing there. That's kind of ironic. So there are, on the other hand, a lot of completely paranoid building societies who are not letting anyone in. And there are little children going down to play with masks. So it seems like things are pretty mixed up. So when we look for the clear unfolding of the consumer, the way we would like it to be, I think we need to sort of doff our cap to the fact that things are pretty mixed. Mostly, I think in India, we're resilient. The resilience comes perhaps less of strength of character and more of how poor we are. Poor people tend to be more resilient because you have no choice but to be resilient. So my favorite WhatsApp on this whole situation, which I think says it all, is a picture where there are the squares, the crosses for social distancing, and everyone has put their chappals on each cross and they're all sitting on the side and gossiping with each other, literally cheek by jowl. This is a great Indian way. The ritual is important. The religion is where it is. And so we see that we saw it even post 26/11 in Bombay after the terrorist attack. After that, when you start looking at what we do when we enter hotels and so on and so forth, it's like a friend of mine says, there's a puja and an aarti and you wave that wand around the car, and I don't know whether either side knows what they're looking for. So when I go into a mall and he says, do you have the Arogya Setu app? And I say, absolutely do. And he doesn't know what he's looking for, and I'm not sure what he's looking for, but we both know that he said, sabko no, no, no karke mere ko tick dikha do. So I think we do have new rituals. I am not completely sure that all of us have a new religion. Of course, some of us do. So I think what this has done is segmented people into what I am noticing. I call them the paranoids, the pragmatics, and the bindases. The bindas you can see on the road without a mask decorating chin. You go into any market, you see it. The paranoids are the building societies for sure, many of them, and some friends we have. And I would say the majority are somewhere in the pragmatic stage that says that we have to do what we have to do, but we have to do it carefully. So this leads to actually very interesting segmentation. So I was watching the US elections and I was particularly struck by how those who mailed in happened to vote one way and those who went in to vote voted another way. And I think the answer was so interestingly tied up to whether you believed Corona was a real thing or whether you believed it wasn't. Of course, it was also tied up to whether you believed mail-in ballots were a real thing or not. But I think those are the kinds of stuff that we should be looking out for when we are starting to look for how consumers unfold. So my think tank, People Research on India's Consumer Economy, we do a track, we call it an ICE 360 track, India's citizen environment. And we ran with a really pure sample drawn from high income and low income states. We actually asked people to choose between two statements, and we ran this over 10 weeks. So, statement A said Corona is extremely dangerous. People should do everything they can to protect themselves, should not step out of the house unless unavoidable, best to stay home and not meet anybody. The other statement was Corona is dangerous. Everyone has to take care and not stupidly do things which are known to be unsafe. Other than that, everyone has to try and get back to leading a normal life with safety. When we started our round one in May, we looked at the poor, we looked at the group of lower income people. That's the lower 40% of income in India, the middle 40%, and the top 20%, which is the so-called middle class. Now, when we started in May, more or less uniformly, it was 60-40. 60 agreed that you should take the utmost care, be paranoid, not step out of the house. And 40 said, we have to get out. In May, the richer people was 70-30, the poorer people was 60-40. By the time we got to July, it had flipped and flipped completely, where more people said you've got to try and get back to leading a normal life. So I called someone after seeing a piece of data, someone in the business that said that sales of some products which are very outdoor have come back. For example, cigarette sales which are sold by stick at counters and at this point in time. And I was like, given respiration, given all these things, how is it that sales are even back to the level at which they are? To which I was witheringly told that white collar rich are people who are staying at home. Everybody else is back at work. This is actually an interesting thing to think about, because if you look at the occupation structure of India, the white collar people who are nicely employed in offices and so on and so forth and can work from home is less than 15% of urban India, is about less than 10% of all India. The bulk of people are casual labor, petty traders, people who need to go into work in order to earn. They're shopkeepers, they're business people who cannot run businesses remotely. I don't mean big businesses. I think we all know that we're a land of micro businesses. It is a lot of what we call grade 4, which is domestic help, which is guards, which is watchmen, drivers of cars and trucks. And so a lot of India by definition cannot stay home. So if you look at occupation and then you look at changes pre, post, during Corona, everybody was forced to sit at home. Pre-Corona is so far back into history. But surely things that we started doing pre-Corona, we are doing more of now. But right now, if this is the occupation structure of India, then obviously everybody is really back trying to do whatever they can do to earn whatever living they can, especially if they've all taken a hit. The proportion that gets a regular salary in this country is very, very, very small. That is our secret that we try and keep well secreted when we look at large consumer numbers of expenditure, but I think there's no point being delusional around that. So if you don't go out to work, you don't get to eat, I think is a really sobering question. So what is really happening? I think what is happening is that consumers have had a huge shock. People have had a huge shock. They've gone through a very bizarre period, as we all have. I don't think I need to elaborate any of it, because every single person who's listening to this has gone through exactly the same experience. Isn't that something to think about for marketers? So they've had a huge shock, a huge change in lifestyle. This has been a forced experiment like no other. If you had wanted to do a consumption experiment, I don't think you could have designed a more robust consumer experiment. No matter who you were, the men did it, the women did it. Some of them had to leave their locations and go back to their hometowns. We've had supply shocks of non-availability of things and having to make do. And we've also had income shocks of an extremely high order. So we've all been very shaken up with what happened and shaken at what can happen. So there is fear, there is worry, there are horror stories. And the way we're responding to it is through paranoid, pragmatic, and bindas. Whatever has to happen, as we say down south, will happen. That's what we say in my hometown. So I think the question here is that what are consumers in a mood to do? What they will do is a function of suppliers. I say this all the time, it takes two to tango. If suppliers do not offer alternatives, if there was no e-commerce alternative that was being offered on a stepped up gas pedal, I don't think people would have used e-commerce channels. I think we would have just learned to do without and felt quite bad or found alternatives. So the consumer is looking at a flight to safety and a flight to trust. I wouldn't say a flight, I would say a gravitational pull towards safety and trust. It's exactly like the stock market. The stock market has already taken its flight towards safety and flight towards good governance and trust. So in this mahal, what should companies do? I think they should read the environment carefully, not jump to conclusions that everything has changed or jump to conclusions that nothing has changed. Normally, we have people saying nothing has changed. This time, we have people saying everything's changed. So I think we need to figure out in the context of every business what has changed. Also, I think companies need to understand that the dharma of business is to add value to consumers and extract value to consumers. So the only question really that people should be asking is, how do I add value to consumers now? Ironically, when we were all locked up in our homes with very few brands and companies talking to us, companies were, as I've often said, consumers were in islands of calm and silence. Companies were in turbulent waters with supply chain shocks and various other supply shocks. And so I think the question is that how do you talk to them at this time? What do you do for them? How do you add value and how do you extract value? That is what business actually is. How do you give people something genuinely better and figure out how to do it? So I think the idea is to focus on supply solutions, not focus on gazing at the consumer more and more and more and looking to the consumer for inspiration. I think what has happened to the consumer is well known. How consumers have responded is also well known. Take a walk on the street, take a walk through your building society, take a walk through rural India. And I think it's fairly clear that we have all shades and grades, with this being India, the pragmatic dominating. So at a very simple example of a supply solution, everyone wants a digital option. Everyone, and by that I mean everyone wants a digital option. So if you don't have your digital act together, get it together. This is not the time to ask. Even before COVID was never the time to ask, is India ready for digital? Because our temples went digital a long time back. And when temples go digital, the digital quotient of a country is pretty high. Also, machines don't discriminate, men discriminate. So a long time back, lower income consumers have preferred to deal with the world through IVRs and ATMs rather than deal with the world of people, because people discriminate, machines don't. So if you don't have your digital options ready, including being emotionally ready to have returns as and when the consumers choose to return, book when they want to book, cancel when they want to cancel, if you don't have the flexibility and the economics to be able to do it, I think it's a good time now to actually get that act together. Interestingly, the learning curve of India has always been extremely high. The other day, I went on to a WhatsApp from a religious group, and it's more a lay religious group, and I went on to see what they were saying. And they actually use Zoom with breakout groups where every breakout group learned one part of the shlok. And I was thinking, oh my God, they're doing it better and smoother than the last board meeting I attended, where half the people couldn't hear, breakout groups were a little clumsy. So there we are. I think again, a study we did on digital adoption, you can read it, I think, at www.ice360.in, shows that 30% of the poor and half of the rich have used digital payments in the lockdown period. So digital payments are here to stay. Digital payments are free. If the supply side had put a price on digital payments, if the government had not put their foot down on zero cost of digital payments, would we have had such high digital adoption? That's really the question. So the job of supply is to build the bridge between, I think, what the customer problem is and what the supply solution is. In fact, the other day, I gave my dhobi money for Diwali as well as this, and he said, bank mein dal do na. And I said, you have a bank account in the village? And he said, it doesn't matter, put it in. And dignity actually comes from being able to get money into your account without a third party knowing. Similarly, if you talk about a few more things that are different, earlier we figured that eat at home was going out of fashion and that the focus was all about eat outside and how do we start creating eating outside home options. So companies that were traditionally in the eat at home were looking at eat outside and how to be a part of the eat outside occasions as well as the money. Now, actually, interestingly, it swung the other way. It swung the other way where there are a lot more people who are eating at home. There are a lot more people who are cooking at home. My millennial children have started cooking for the first time in their lives, I suspect. With it, there's more experimentation, but there is a greater willingness to pay a premium for better quality. So there are moves on this side, but this is also in response to the number of things that are coming now directly from farm, the number of organic options that you actually have. Similarly, people would not have ordered in had there not been cloud kitchens where you could order in from known sources with very simple delivery. If again, there's a little bit of the ritual where people tell you that this is trusted. Swiggy tells you it's trusted because this is the temperature of the cook. I don't know how to interpret the temperature of the cook, and I certainly don't know what happened between the cook and the food coming and the temperature of everybody along the way. But the point is that signaling trust, having trust is great, signaling trust is even better. And I think that is one of the things that really companies need to start doing all the time. Customers are saying, for example, that I want more immunity. They're not saying I want Tulsi chai. So the bridge between what the customer is saying and what suppliers do is, I think, what we really need to do. So delivery and signal of the benefit. I want a holiday desperately. I am so sick and tired of my four walls. But I need to go where it is trusted. And clearly, for example, if you are a curator of holiday experiences, you should quickly start looking at remote and bubble. Bubble being a group of people who want to go together, who are known to be safe, and remote, and start trying to curate these. Because if you don't curate these with certified staff that are safe, you're not actually going to be able to move from here. What do you do if you're a five-star hotel and you want holiday destinations? You have to learn to play the new game in terms of delivering trust and signaling trust. So I think figuring out the product offering is important. Airbnb, for example, has pivoted. There's a lovely letter from their CEO where they say that we're going back to the heartland of our business. The heartland of our business is connecting people. So in between, we'd sort of gone into the quasi-hotel business, but now we're going to go back to the heartland of our business. It also takes imagination, which again, only suppliers have. Someone said to me, what are customers going to do at weddings? How are weddings going to be going forward? And I said to the person, I think he was a jeweler, I said, it's very simple. The need, beti to ek hi hai, mere paas paise hain doesn't go away. Now you can only have 50 people, so you're not going to have 1,000 people. So how and where are they going to spend their money? You're not flying in orchids from Thailand, as happens in very upper income weddings or wherever you're flying it in from. If you take that whole lot together and you put it together, then I think the question is, what would you do as a jeweler? Maybe return diamond rings for people? I don't know. So I think that imagination in terms of how to fix things is really important. Small vendors have also pivoted. It's not just the big boys. The sabjiwala across the road from me does not carry inventory anymore. Just think of how much he's de-risked himself. He says, the previous night, send me a WhatsApp. No matter how exotic, no matter how small, I'll get it for you. He says that now the tempos are coming in from Nasik and other places into Bombay with fresh vegetables at various points in the city. He doesn't have to spend money to go to the nearest to the nearest mandi, and being a small player, get whatever leftovers they are. So it just is a whole lot of possibilities. I think we know where the consumer is at. If we don't take advantage of the possibilities as well as add value to the consumers, I think we are going to go back to some form of status quo and life will go on. So I think the job of business at times like this is to lead and guide people through these times. The job of business is not to ask consumers for answers and wait for consumers to provide the answers and go. So there are businesses that are saying support small suppliers. There are businesses that are saying, let's explore India at this time. We're in the holiday business, don't go abroad. There are a whole lot of people who are doing a whole lot of interesting things. So that's really, I think, to sum up what I have to say. Yes, there are challenging times that consumers have been through. Don't assume everything has changed. Please walk on the streets and discover a little bit. And finally, it takes two to tango. And when suppliers do produce solutions that add value to the consumer and extract value from the consumer, I think that's when we have a good thing going. So good luck, everybody. Stay safe. Corona is dangerous. Let's take care and not do anything stupid. I'm a pragmatist who sometimes feels like a paranoid, but I think we are all agreed that this too shall pass. And I hope you had a really good Diwali. Thank you.